Alright guys, welcome back to another video. This is going to be a video specifically about some PvP tips. So I've been getting a couple of requests for this just to, hey, can you give us some PvP tips just so we can figure out, maybe like know what to look for, how to practice and whatnot. And so first thing I'm going to note, just right out the gate, I'm just going to say this, I'm not like a PvP god. I would say I'm definitely above average, but I'm not like some absolute beast at PvP. But so with official servers down and Gloomrot on the horizon, I figured now is a good time to work on pretty much all the aspects of our gameplay. So not just progression. I've been doing some progression practice, but also that PvP practice. So like I said, I haven't been spending as much time on that as I probably should, so that's why I've been hitting the dojo and just going after these guys here. If you don't know what that is, highly recommend you check the server list, look for the dojo. Great server. Again, like I said, I'm not going to claim to be the best at PvP in this game at all, and if you think you are, I would invite you to head over to the dojo and just to see how you stack up against those guys. I mean, who knows? Maybe you're just some absolute god at PvP, but let's just say some of the guys over there can run circles around people like me. I'm not saying I'm like the best. I would definitely say I'm above average. And some of those guys could just absolutely, utterly obliterate me. So every single thing I throw at them, I just can't do anything about it. So, again, head over there. You'll see how good they are. But something important to know about PvP that I would be willing to bet that even the Giga Chads over in the dojo would agree with me on is on an open world PvP. So, like on a server, official server, whatever it may be, on a quote-unquote real V-Rising server, you don't always get to pick when you PvP for the most part, which means you don't always have control over what kind of build you have, or you don't always have the optimal build, optimal blood, optimal weapons, optimal everything unlocked. So a lot of these guys who are absolute monsters in the dojo, they use stuff like frost builds to just do huge, insane damage chains and stun chains and frost freeze chains. And while I'm not saying that's impossible to do on a real server, in terms of a progression build, it's not necessarily the most viable thing to do unless you're just kind of roaming the map and killing everyone you see. So, I mean, by all means, if you want to do that, that's definitely something you could do, and more power to you. But it is not really a viable progression build, specifically also because you don't actually get all the parts to a build like that until late game, until you unlock very specific abilities. So, that's why, so what I've been doing in the dojo is kind of do my best to practice with weapons and abilities that I use commonly in my progression runs, so like axes, spears, etc., as well as really just every variation of weapon where possible, because so whenever, knowing what we know about progression, how we move through the ranks, some of those important things in order to progress is getting a merciless copper or merciless iron recipe. I would imagine also getting a sanguine weapon is going to be important for Gloomrot. And we don't usually, I don't know how Gloomrot's going to change things, but we don't usually get to pick the weapon we have. So sometimes you may fight Clive and get a merciless copper recipe, and sometimes it's sword, sometimes it's spear, sometimes it's axes, and that's a copper weapon, so you don't have your E. Sometimes it's mace, etc., etc. So I kind of just practice with everything, just to try to get used to it and remind myself of what I have. So one of my weakest weapons, or what that I would say probably was my weakest weapon, was Scythe for PvP. I used to think it wasn't all that great, and I would still say it's not really that great for PvP, but I've been spending more time with it, trying to get better at it, and you might have noticed in the most recent run that I posted, there was a moment when I was about level 44 in the, Graveyard of the Damned or whatever it's called, where I met a guy who was in his 60s, and I was level 40, or 44 anyway, and I beat him with, I lost probably a fifth of my HP total, and he was using, healing spells, etc., and I had no problem beating him just because I had been getting used to really PvPing with the abilities I had, so. Anyway, okay, so, some tips. The tips that I'm going to share, like I said, are coming from a progression standpoint, meaning how to get the most out of PvP for progression on an official server in terms of like racing to the finish, getting the shards, etc. So if you're PvP hungry, if you're just like an absolute bloodthirsty monster, by all means, I would suggest that the best way for you to progress would be just going on a full loot server. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Being a PvP monster is actually, I mean, it's insane. I watching people who are insane at this game and play full loot is amazing. I don't really play out that much. I played it a few times, but yeah, go play in a full loot server by all means, because the thing that's so good about that is if you're really really good, or you want to be good, or you've been practicing whatever it may be, your PvP. What's faster? Let's put it this way. What's faster? Farming 1,200 iron so you can build a smithy and build all these things, build stuff, get a general soul reaper, build all that stuff. And maybe, okay, now I can go level up. I can go fight Octavian. Then I can go get some silver, etc. Or being so good at the game that you can have, like, you can just kill someone with iron. You can kill them with copper and steal their iron weapons. Then you take your iron weapon and steal someone's silver weapon, right? So if you're like that good, and you really want to just PvP, go to a full loot server and just wreck people's faces. And by all means, skip the progression of grinding, the grind progression that I do, that you have to do in a regular PvP server. I'll link somebody who's insanely good at this. So I don't know every single content creator. I don't know every single person who plays this game. So there's probably other people here, but one of the people that I watch for that the most in terms of just absolute, the ultimate PvP gigachads is Teldo. If you don't know who Teldo is, you are missing out. Let me just introduce this guy to you. Teldo was a professional Battlerite player, amongst other things. But professional Battlerite player, which if you know anything about Battlerite, this game takes the majority, if almost all, of its PvP stuff from Battlerite. Like the base of what this PvP, what the PvP is in this game is from Battlerite. Jade, the Vampire Hunter, is literally a character in Battlerite, and the abilities she has are literally abilities in Battlerite. So, yeah, so it's Stunlock's game before this. So, he was, pro in that. I used to watch videos of him all the time to learn, how to. He has amazing guides. Shout out to his Croak build. He definitely taught me how to play Croak, my favorite character. And he absolutely, so this guy Telda, right? He absolutely obliterates an open world PvP, especially with his duo partner. And I'll link a video to him. There's a video I remember very specifically where he started out, I think he made a base, got to level 20 with reinforced bone armor and weapons. And then got from level 20 up to level 71 by only PvPing in 2 hours. So, just imagine that. He literally got to Silver and Dawnthorn, 71, in 2 hours just by PvPing. No grinding, nothing. So I'll link that. In the bottom. So first, okay, let's go to this is for some non-full loot PvP tips. Sorry that this is taking so long, but okay. So first things first, I would say one of the most important things is being comfortable with your progression abilities in PvP. What I mean is, if you're always using the same abilities, we don't know how it's going to change with Gloomrot. I hate that I have to say this all the time, but we don't know how it's going to change with Gloomrot. For instance, you'll see when I play, a lot of times I'm running Blood Counter and Chaos Volley because they're really good for bossing, but they're also really good for PvP. Those are amazing abilities for PvP. So I run those as much as I can, and I'm very comfortable with them. So the more comfortable you are with the abilities you are, that you use for progression, the more comfortable you are using them in PvP, the less you're going to have to worry about getting ganked and having this issue where you're like, oh, I'm not using the right abilities. So with that said, if you need to swap to something to abilities that are more PvE central, this is the second tip. If you have to swap to abilities to more PvE central abilities, don't forget to swap back as soon as possible, and try to only use them in as few fights as possible. So an example of this would be Angora. I like to use Ward of the Damned in the current build of the game. I like to use Ward of the Damned against Angora because the skeletons are just so good at for fighting her. But Ward of the Damned is very bad in PvP. It's just not really a thing. People can just walk away from the skeletons. All it really will do at that point is act as a means to block someone's damage. So what I do is if I have to swap to something that's PvE centered, I swap back as soon as I can. So, okay. So the third tip is take smart fights. Don't always try to outmuscle people unless you're confident in your PvP. So what I mean by that is, sometimes you may think like, let's say you just got done grinding a little bit, you have stuff in your inventory, you're kind of just doing your thing, and all of a sudden you see a guy who just he's out there just smacking some trees. And you think, you know what? I'm just going to kill this guy real quick. Well, you sometimes, if you're not sure of the situation and you have a good inventory, maybe you have some stuff that you can't risk to lose. And if you're in that situation, what happens if you take that PvP fight and it turns out he's actually next to his base and his boy jumps out and they double gank you, chain you with merciless charge, and you just die and lose whatever, a full inventory of iron or cotton, whatever it may be. So that's something to keep in mind. With that, so again, kind of going along with that, don't risk what you're not willing to lose. That would be point number 4. Don't risk what you're not willing to lose. It's kind of an all-in. Every time you're PvPing, I see it as an all-in. If I'm not willing to risk what's in my inventory, then I'm not going to I'm not going to take the fight. Maybe that sounds like I'm a coward or whatever it may be, but my goal is progression. It's not just PvP. PvP is great, and it can absolutely, even in a normal PvP server, PvP is amazing. If you have a really active server, you can skip a lot of progression. If you find those moments where hey, I'm just running around and I see this guy with some garlic stacks on him. I bet he has a lot of cotton. I'm gonna take the time and take the advantage of this and try to get this guy. Maybe you're going into the cursed forest and you see somebody in there and you're like, hey, I'm gonna try to get this guy to get fought by the patrols, etc., etc. But all of these decisions I always make. Every time I do make these decisions, I always think, am I willing to risk what's in my inventory right now for this fight? Do I have enough durability? Can I even afford to fight? Have I died a couple times in other fights? And if I lose this fight, am I going to break some items and then I have to go farm? That's the actual worst case scenario. If you break weapons or items whenever you're fighting like that in progression, you're setting yourself back to a huge extent unless you just so happen to have the mats lying around. So, okay, next tip. This is a general PvP tip that is just how to be good at PvP in general, is don't ability dump. Don't just throw your abilities out. Oh, my stuff's on cooldown? All right, I'm just going to throw them out. Oh, I missed my Chaos Volley? Okay, I'm going to try to go for Spear. Oh, I missed for Spear? Oh, I'm going to try to go for my E. Oh, I missed that? Okay, I'm going to go for my other ability. Oh, I'm just going to throw my ult out. Maybe they'll get hit by it. Who knows? Oh, I haven't been tracking their dash. Do they still have their dash? I have no idea. I'm going to throw my ult out anyway, just in case. And then they dash away from it and they miss it, and you miss the ult, and then they ult you, and now you just lose, right? So don't ability dump, and with that as well, know your damage, quote unquote, reach. Know your reach. Know okay, if I commit to this, can I all in right now? Can I all in with my merciless charge ult, etc., etc.? Can I do those? Is that worth it? Will it even, if I all in with all this stuff, are they going to be 1/3 HP, but then I'm half HP because I've been getting poked, and they're just going to kill me? So know your damage reach is a huge deal. Know when to all in and how much damage you have available, and that only comes with practice. You will, no one's sitting here with a calculator mid PvP fight saying okay, well my Chaos Volley is doing 19 damage a hit. Okay, so the two Chaos Volleys and plus Chaos Burn. Okay, that's 48 damage. So he has Hollow Fang, I believe. So that means no one's doing that. So it comes with practice, knowing how much damage you're able to do. So yeah. Next tip, this is again the general PvP tip, is use at least one defensive ability. Something I see all the time. Something I see all the time on real servers is players using 2 offensive abilities. So Chaos Volley and Sanguine Coil, or Wisps and Chaos Volley, Frostbat Chaos Volley, all kinds of things like that, right? And people will, Purgatory, and here's another one, Purgatory Sanguine Coil. Oh my goodness, stop. Don't Purgatory Sanguine Coil. I know people like that because in their mind, they're like, well, if I take the damage, I want to be able to heal. You know, like if I get hit, I want to be able to heal. So I need my heals. You know, purgatory, and I can just like out tank them. But here's the problem: is if somebody knows what they're doing and they have a good build, they can just burst you down so much that you don't actually get to heal. And like maybe you get a little bit of heal, but you don't actually get to do, you know, big heals. So like your max HP will go down while you're in combat, so you won't get to be able to take advantage of all those heals if somebody rushes you down and you can't get away, you can't get them off of you. A fighting game term, right? You might, anyone who's a fighting game fan might know the term a get off me ability, right? So basically it's the ability, it says exactly what it sounds like, something that says, you know, GTFO, get off of me, dude. Like you're rushing me down, I can't do anything about it, get off of me, right? If you don't have a get off me tool in this game, you're gonna get destroyed by people who know what to do. So use one defensive ability. Pick the one you want. Things are changing with the next patch. I'll absolutely admit that. We don't know exactly how everything's going to go. Certain things are changing. Certain shields are changing. You know, as it stands now, Frost and other shields, you know, as you hit them, you get hit back. Like it'll like bounce back every time. So like if you spear someone with Chaos Barrier, then you just get hit 37 times with the spear. You know, every single one of those hits is hitting you back. That's changing as far as we know, where instead, if you hit someone's shield, the shield will like quote unquote charge, and they can recast it to use an ability. So we're not 100% sure exactly how that's going to work, but I guarantee you that defensive abilities will still be just as strong. Not as insane, but still just, let's say, just as important. So use it with at least one defensive ability. Next, I would say, okay, so the second to last point here is learn to weapon swap to at least one other weapon. So I know it's difficult, especially if you look at my hotbar in these games in the dojo. I have like every single weapon type on my hotbar, and that's really overwhelming to know how to do. Like, I'm gonna push 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, X, Z, Q, middle mouse. Well, you know, like it's wild, and some people can do that very well. I'm not one of those people. I can usually switch between up to probably about 4, sometimes 5 weapons if I'm actually paying attention. It's just too much brain power, you know. So I'm very confident with 3 weapons most of the time. Like if I'm rolling with 3 weapons, I'm very comfortable with that. And it's important to practice to do that because weapon abilities, the combinations of weapon abilities in this game is what really makes PvP shine and what makes for a good player. So like slashers, you know, they are great by themselves, but slasher E stunning someone into spear Q is just, that's the bread and butter combo damage of just like crazy amounts of damage. Then there's like axe, I know they've nerfed axe E, but you used to be able to axe E into mace Q and just do 200 damage in one hit. Like that was like a pretty common thing. You could still probably do it if you can get lucky and like stun them or something with Frost or whatever, but yeah, you get the idea. So get comfortable with at least two weapons that you could swap back and forth to. And this is not only good just in PvP, this is also very good in PvE. Weapon swaps are a huge part of PvE. If you can get good at them, your PvE will shoot through go through the roof. But anyway, so last but not least, I would say the most important thing you can do, I've already mentioned, is practice to get good. You will not get good at this game if you don't practice. So go to the dojo, play the game, go into PvP servers, just keep practicing and you will get good. But anyway, that is going to be it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry this video is super long. Let me know if you have any questions. Also, I'm working on my audio. Hopefully I can figure that out soon. But yes, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will catch you in the next one.